Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge & Company. Thank heavens Gene Russianoff chose long ago to devote his career to reforming New York City's politics and protecting the riders of mass transit. He is the senior staff attorney at NYPIRG, the New York Public Interest Research Group, and the attorney for their Straphangers Campaign, and my guest today. Welcome.
Thank you for the generous introduction.
Oh, please. You are. I mean, who would we have championing us? Who else is worrying about charter reform or what's happening to people traveling on mass transit in this city? Do you detect any rebellion against the MTA's plans?
You know, I wish I did. I think there's a lot of public concern, also a lot of public unawareness. When people discover that their M train, it just doesn't, it's gone, and their train is twice as crowded as it used to be, I think there'll be a lot of outrage. And there are communities, Lower Manhattan, Upper Manhattan, Park Slope, and Bay Ridge that are taking a tremendous hit. And you're talking about people doubling their weights. They're going to eliminate, Ronnie. They're going to eliminate 570 bus stops. You know, there'll be no more service at those stops.
They started doing that a while ago, and it took me by such surprise. I mean, you had to walk. And I kept thinking, what about older people? What are they going to do? How do they get to these bus stops?
Well, I think we're going to find out. You know, it's an overwhelming number, but I think we'll find out that several are in extremely sensitive locations, near apartment houses, senior centers, and there'll be a lot of anger. There's concern. But it's a difficult time to be broke. And I think, as Jim Dwyer in the Daily News said recently, the MTA has turned into Greece.
He doesn't work at the news, the Times.
The Times.
An apology to him.
Sorry.
Anyway, the bus service, not only are they cutting bus stops, but they're cutting bus lines.
Yes.
Right?
You know, wholesale lines where you're going to give you very little opportunity. My area in Park Slope, Brooklyn, the B71, which goes up Union Street, the B75 that goes up 9th Street, the B77 that goes to Red Hook, they're all going to be combined into one new line, the B61, and it's going to be slower, and it's going to take you out of your way, and there's going to be less service than you were getting before.
And more people on every bus, right?
Yeah.
A friend of mine told me that they're going to change the 50th Street crosstown in Manhattan, that it won't run on holidays and weekends.
Yeah, well, I know they're changing the M57, and I think the M20, and in the Village, they're eliminating the weekend M8. There are dozens of routes that are affected. It's really, the president of the Transit Authority, a man named Tom Prendergast, said it was the worst cuts. They are the worst cuts he's seen in 35 years in the business.
So there are two questions. One is who makes the decisions about the cuts, but more basic to that is, what are we doing with a mass transit system in the city of New York that isn't properly funded or isn't seen as a necessity to be funded?
It's probably the best asset the city has for getting out of this great recession. It's cities all across America envy New York, our ability to move people relatively cheaply and efficiently. And it's, you know, hurting it is cutting off our nose to spite our face. You know, I don't want to strike a totally negative note. There's still some efforts. There's a bill in the Senate, and now it's been introduced in the House. In the Senate, it's been introduced by Senator Schumer, Gillibrand, Menendez from New Jersey, and Dodd from Connecticut, and Michael McMahon introduced it in the House. And it would raise $2 billion in emergency money, kind of like a bailout, the way the banks were bailed out. And this would help systems across America. We're not alone. The group called Transportation for America believes that there are about they know that 84% of the transit systems in America have either raised fares or cut service or done both in recent times, and they need help. You read stories of whole routes disappear in Chicago and St. Louis, and so we're hoping that there's a chance that the federal government might step in, and that's really our last hope. If they don't, by June 28th, these cuts will take effect, and they're working in high gear over at the MTA, assuming that they're going to happen.
It's, I mean, you don't see a road leading into a city, I don't think in any city, that isn't clogged with cars that are polluting the air. I mean, does anybody not have the feeling that the future of the country is on mass transit?
Well, you know, I wish I could say yes. I mean, the Obama administration is spending billions of dollars on high-speed rail, and you could debate whether at a time that the existing transit systems in America are in such trouble you should be doing it, but it's a very expensive proposition, a high-speed rail between New York and Chicago, and these are something that some of, like Japan, France has. In London, you get off at the airport at Heathrow, and you get a train that takes you directly downtown. You're talking to someone who's been in the trenches a lot, and so those seem, I have the view that most writers do, which is that, you fix
That's
the
it.
damn M train first,
Yeah.
or
Right.
don't make traveling on the weekend such a hell.
The debt that I read someplace of $3 billion in 2000 is now $30 billion.
Well,
What does
here's
that
the deal.
mean?
This is a shocking statistic, Ronnie. The MTA has borrowed $28 billion for new cars and signals and stations and good stuff. But it's now the 5th largest government debtor in the United States. Only California, New York, City and State, and Massachusetts are ahead of us. And the result is that they're paying about $2 billion a year out of an $11 billion budget just on the debt service before. And, it's a legacy of George Pataki's administration. The Democrats before him would tax and spend, and that has its, antagonists. The Republicans would borrow and spend, so they wouldn't have to raise taxes, but the result is an enormous burden on the riding public. The other statistic is that we pay about 55% of the costs of running the subways and buses in New York City. And that may sound like a bargain to some people. The rest is picked up by government and taxes and tolls. But the average in America is about 37%. You go to cities like Boston, LA, Chicago, Atlanta, Washington, D.C., the riders pay a much smaller share of the cost of running those systems.
That's because it comes from the government.
Yes.
So it was years ago, I guess, that the state and city cut their payments to the MTA. When was that? Do you remember?
Well, it was
In the early 90s, late 80s?
I was when Giuliani became mayor. It's
Another
legacy.
one of our like.
He did what other people before him and since him have done, which is appoint his director of Office of Management and Budget to be on the board, ostensibly to watch the books closely, but also to find out if there's any money kicking around that the city can glom onto. And that's a real issue now, which is that the one thing that the MTA did all these cuts and they voted them through, but the one thing they didn't vote on was the proposal to eliminate student Metro cards, which are relied on by 585,000 students, including my own daughters. And it's, we live in a city where we encourage people to send their kids to places that are not in the neighborhood. It's a choice system. The mayor is very proud of that. And also, another shocking statistic, 68% of the kids in high school are eligible for free lunch, which means they come from families with incomes below $28,000. So the idea of paying hundreds of dollars more to get to school is just, it's just insane. And so, there's still hope that the mayor will step up to the plate and find the money to help the MTA with the cost of moving these kids, which is a lot.
But right now on the table is that the end of the month, June, that those passes will.
As I understand the timetable, there'll still definitely be passes through summer school over the summer. In September, if the MTA's current proposal is voted on by the board and not changed, everybody will travel at half fare. And the next September in 2011, there'll be no free fare, no half fare. You're on your own.
So these cuts in services are to prevent raising the fare, so-called, supposedly?
Well, on this I have sympathy for the MTA, which is that they have about an $800 million deficit. And some of it is because of the way they manage and the way they pay their vendors. And the MTA chairman, Jay Walter, has been doing a lot on that score. But the real reason why they're in such trouble is they're funded by those fares and tolls, but also by a series of dedicated taxes, sales tax, corporate income tax, a gasoline tax, and a taxi. They're all coming in below what they were projected to come in, and that's a result of the economy. One of the taxes is, or two of them are real estate taxes. Like 3-4 years ago, they brought in more than $1 billion a year, and now they're bringing in about $400 million, a kind of catastrophic dip in the proceeds. So they find themselves in this position where, and it keeps getting worse. That's what's the problem. The history of this is the MTA presented a series of what they call Doomsday Cuts back in '08. And the legislature came up with a bailout package at that time, so-called bailout package, $1.8 billion, but it fell apart. And so, hence the reporters at the Times are saying that they're like Greece. And it got worse in December, and then it got worse again in February. I'm hoping it's not a free fall, but they're presented a problem. A lot of people think they're like very wasteful. They see everybody swipe into the system. But I genuinely believe that if you find yourself getting hundreds of millions of dollars less in subsidy, you have to deal with it. And which is why we're working with other environmental groups and a lot of the transit labor unions to press Washington to come up with more aid.
We have to find a way that the government somehow shares a larger portion of that cost. And I know it's hard because the governments are also so beleaguered with deficits, but this is just not, it doesn't seem to be an acceptable way to support mass transit.
I should plug the group's coalition has a website.
Oh, definitely.
KeepAmericaMoving.org, KeepAmericaMoving.org, and it can tell you what you can do if you want to speak up for transit and for this emergency aid bill.
This is for the federal government.
The federal government.
And then your Straphangers has a website.
Yes, straphangers.org. But for purposes of saving, coming up with money, Keep America Moving is the.
That's where we want the energies to go.
Key one. And there've been a lot of protests about these cuts. We're not going gently into that good night. 2,500 people came to the hearings that the MTA held. About 500 people testified. The city council, your old institution, has been great on this, and they collected 41,000 petition signatures through the members because there's such. It was a way for them to connect with the people in their district, and there are a lot of advocates for transit on the local level.
So this goes back though to who made the decision. How do they make the decision of where they're going to eliminate service?
Well, that's a good question. First, they came up with a list of doomsday cuts, which they didn't want to make, and so some of them were spectacularly awful, like running trains every 30 minutes at night instead of every 20 minutes at night. They were going to shutter a whole bunch of stations in Lower Manhattan on the R line. And they were going to raise the fare to $2.50. This was back in March, April, May of 2008. And the legislature came out with this bailout package, and they were all pulled back. And then the finances got worse again. So,
it's an inherited kind of list.
Yeah, but what's right is, I mean, the officials, the bureaucrats at the MTA felt, and I think a lot of them do feel, that these are not, they wouldn't want to make these cuts if they didn't have to, but they're as acceptable. I don't know if that's the right word. They think they do the least damage. We disagree. Like, for example, they axed 450 station booth attendants, and we think having people at the front of the system when you come in is really critical for convenience and safety. And they don't feel that way. And so now, we're very concerned about turnstile jumping increasing, and there was an article today in the papers that said that one of the daily, I think it was AM New York, one of the daily papers, about how people are jamming the MetroCard vending machines at places where there are no clerk and then selling swipes to people. And
the ingenuity of the people in New York, right?
And the hardship for the people who can't, pay for a pass to get in because the machine doesn't work.
And it is very expensive. It's expensive for working people, and if you're not working, if you've been laid off, or you don't have a job, I don't know how you are expected to move around. So, in other words, it's a very dismal picture. Try to get the money from Washington. How do we look forward to the future?
Well, like everyone else, we're hopeful, wishing that the economy picks up. That's really critical. I mean, the subways and buses are very affected by there's almost a direct coordination between employment and mass transit. Although the numbers have stayed very high even through this recession. People have been using the system a lot.
It's very interesting. Let's skip now to the Charter Commission.
Okay.
NYPIRG is an interesting organization. It's both an advocacy organization, and from what I can get, it's like a training organization, isn't it? I mean, it works with college students. It's
Yes.
run by students.
Yes, we have a board of directors for
Yeah.
representing all of our colleges.
Right. So you're really feeding the future into a lot of these wonderful advocacy organizations, right?
Oh, well, that's our goal.
Yeah.
And I'm always happy when I see people who graduate from our, going on to being a public interest lawyer or work for legal aid or do good in their community, be teachers, and that's a big goal of ours.
So you've been very important in trying to reform the way politics is played in New York City. Right?
Well, we've had some
campaign
real,
finance.
yes.
Yeah, tell us
No,
what's
we've had some real success. We have the best campaign finance program in the country. Most recently, it's limited contributions from people who do business with the city, which I think is a giant step forward. And I give a lot of credit to both the Speaker Quinn and Mayor Bloomberg on this one. They really put together a good law. We have a voter's guide. We mail to every home with a registered voter a guide about what's on the ballot, and that you don't see that mainly in the Northeast. You see it more out in the West Coast, and it's really very progressive. We have a voter assistance commission that is supposed to try and figure out ways to encourage more people to vote and to turn out. And we've done well, particularly when you compare us to Albany. And we've done well largely through the charter revision process. I kind of cut my teeth as a younger advocate on the 1989 charter, and there we got a whole bunch of important improvements like campaign finance and the Voter Assistance Commission.
It's amazing when you think that was 20 years ago.
It is.
It's what brought me into the city council.
Yeah,
Right?
I met my future wife there. So
That's so incredible. So now let's go back. Now the Charter Commission, how does the Charter Commission meet?
Well, the way it's set up is that a mayor has the power under the state law to create a charter commission, which has the responsibility to review the whole charter and see what needs to be changed. In reality, some commissions have been narrowly focused. The current one, appointed by Mayor Bloomberg, all 15 members, is been given a mandate to look more, how did the 89 charter proposals work? A lot of people who are critical that it's given too much power to the mayor. But a lot of people think it's very unlikely that a commission appointed by the mayor is going to change very much in the way of the power balance. But the commission is headed by Matthew Goldstein, who's, as you well know, the chancellor of the City University of New York. And, my group has a lot of hope that he's going to do right by the city. This is an important legacy that you leave for the city. It's just not there to do the bidding of a particular elected official.
So the issues are basically, the major issues are term limits. What else?
Nonpartisan elections.
Nonpartisan election. Two things that the mayor has always been very interested in, right?
And the government
planning process?
the land use.
Right.
And there's a lot of pressure from two different directions. One, the the real estate development community, who sees the current proposals as too onerous, making it difficult for businesses, for developers to build, and a lot of very strong community voices from the community board saying, we're not given a planner, and we have very little resources, and we're trying to keep the carrot of the community up. So there's that tension, and it's a very complicated topic, the land use process, with a lot of legal overlay on it.
So complicated that you can't even really, it's very difficult to understand.
And then there's also this issue of government structure. So, for example, the mayor has made no bones about the fact that he doesn't like the office of public advocate, but there are a lot of people who feel there's a need for checks and balances, and that what you really need is to kind of guarantee their funding so that they're not at the mercy of the city council and whoever is the chief executive officer of the city. Yeah. They've cut the budget at the public advocate to like
the minute the public advocate opens its mouth, it gets slashed, right? And then there's also the role of community boards and borough presidents to discuss. Yeah. Now it's a very short time, though.
Well, it is, and we, along with a whole bunch of other groups and individuals, wrote to Chancellor Goldstein urging him not to bite off more than he could chew. Term limits itself is like a big topic, and there are a variety of opinions. Should it just go back to two terms? Should the city council have 3 terms instead of 2, but the chief executive 2? Should you be able to go back at all? In the future. Right now, you just have to put a 1-year term between your first 2. You can't run for a term, and then you could run again, which some people have done. Yeah. And is that good? So the idea of taking on other issues seems very daunting, and we and lots of other people have urged that they extend their review. The 89 Commission was really a 3-year commission that spent a lot of time, held a lot of meetings, talked to a lot of people, and I think, in my view, made a better city government.
Definitely, and it was a very long process of doing it, and very inclusive. Did the mayor deliberately make such a short time? I know you don't want to answer.
Well, no, I'll answer. This is the 6th, what I'd call quickie Charter Revision Commission. It was really terrible. I think the first Charter Commission Mayor Bloomberg appointed, he appointed to start after July 4th with Labor Day. The proposals were due by Labor Day to the city clerk. So
the recommendations then go on to the ballot.
And and then the public votes on them.
In November.
Yeah, in November.
Right.
So I don't think the 5 months that this commission had is enough to take on land use, government structure, term limits, and nonpartisan elections. And nonpartisan elections is interesting. All the civic community, League of Women Voters, Women's City Club, Common Cause, the Brennan Center for Justice, and at the time Citizens Union, all opposed nonpartisan elections for a variety of reasons. It's not so clear that it really increases voter turnout. The literature is very divided on it. It could possibly harm the campaign finance system by allowing political party money into the primary. And there's a lot, and this is an issue that the voters looked at before, and we've sent to the commission, or we're just about to send, a series of voter participation ideas, which we think are better, more effective ways of, if you really want to increase turnout and the number of people registered to vote, there are different ways to do it. But they require time and study and attention.
It's the whole nonpartisan election is very interesting, and it reflects, I think, what the political parties in the city, the condition and state of the political parties in the city, don't you think? I mean, the Democratic Party it's a general view. It's like being born Presbyterian or being born Jewish. You're Jewish, and you're going to be a Democrat. But in the city government, it doesn't stand for anything that's particularly outstanding. Well, neither does the Republican when you have as a mayor a former Democrat.
Well, one of the things the literature says is that at least party designation gives a general cue to voters, who many of whom, sadly enough, are not very well informed. And so, one article I read, "Teams Without Uniforms," just argues that it's the way to decrease voter turnout because people feel more intimidated about the choices.
It's interesting.
But there's I think everybody agrees on the problem, which is that we have a poorly run election system that results, and there are obstacles to voting that shouldn't be there.
So what is your position about term limits? Do you have one? I'm assuming NYPIRG is supporting not doing nonpartisan elections.
For the last, 17 years it's been on the table, NYPIRG has been resolutely and forthright ambivalent on the topic. And we've debated this more than once at a student board level, and some people have what Henry Stern at one meeting called the "rotate the rascals" view of things. And other people think that it makes the council staff very powerful vis-a-vis the members, and that it undermines the council's ability to be an effective check and balance and have the institutional knowledge to check the executive. We just want a fair discussion. And the one thing that we feel very strongly about is that whatever they propose, they should give the voters the option of saying this can't be changed except by the will of the public, and not by some mayor and council down the line for self-interested reasons.
So do you have on your website the remaining hearings for the...
No, but we probably should. That's good. If you go to nyc.gov. There's a menu to scroll down of city agencies, and one of them is the Charter Commission, and they've been very good at this. They put up webcasts of the meetings. I guess only political junkies may want to watch it, but you can even if you miss a meeting, you can go and see what's
happening. Should be interesting because when television is really bad, I used to watch the Taxi and Limousine Commission hearings, and that's really sad. Now, that was up also for discussion, wasn't it? Is that part of the restructuring to consider something about the Taxi and Limousine Commission?
It got hidden. I'm not sure. There's not an official list. And if you want the general approach of the commission was they held 5 public hearings just to hear what the public had to say. They were kind of rushed, in my opinion, and particularly the one in Manhattan. with very little notice to the public. But people came out, particularly a lot of the people who care about land use and the borough's voice.
And boy, do they care.
And then a lot of people from the Independence Party who care a great deal about nonpartisan elections. And now they're holding, I think, 5 hearings on topics. They've already held one on term limits. Tomorrow night in the Bronx, they hold one on voter participation, and then down the line, they're holding ones on ethics, government structure, and land use.
We're almost at the end, and I wanted to ask you this question. You went to Brooklyn College, you went to Harvard Law School. What made you decide to spend your life in this, with an organization like NYPIRG, in an organization where you are an advocate, but where you're not making a lot of money?
I wanted to like being a lawyer instead of hating it. I feel like the highest calling of a lawyer is to represent a group that has trouble getting representation, and that really describes the transit riders and the people who care about good government in the city. So I don't know.
When did you make up your mind
to
do that?
Pretty much in my even before law school. I'm a child of 2 New Deal Democrats who have this very general view of wanting the world to be a better place. And I don't know how you can live in New York without making some kind of effort to, and many people do, they make an effort to turn the world around them in better ways, in their communities. And so it's that feeling that motivates me.
And you're still an optimist. You do believe you can change the world.
I'm an optimist, although these times
it's hard.
It's hard.
I feel the same way. Well, your parents did a wonderful job, and you do too, and we're indebted to you and filled with gratitude for your activities, and I hope people will go to these websites and will do what we've asked them to do. Thank you, Gene. If there are any people you'd like to hear and topics you'd like us to explore, please let me know. You can write to me at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or you can go to the website at cuny.tv and click on Contact Us. I look forward to hearing from you.